help me.
She was calling out, her voice breaking with sobs.
Please help me. Mommy, Daddy.
The crying stopped. For a moment, the forest was silent, too silent. Something about this felt wrong. In one smooth, jerky motion, she turned to face us.
You found me.
Hey guys, surprised to see me in the intro today? Yeah, I thought, why not? The living me can handle the outro for once. So tonight we're diving into stories from Reddit user Abalonatea. I read a few and got hooked, so I turned it into a compilation. I'm sure you'll enjoy them. Check out their profile in the description. They've got heaps of great stories there. Oh, and if you like my stories and want more, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Because hey, skeletons need love too, even if it's just to keep from rattling away. Alright, let's get into it. I noticed the stain the day I moved in. A damp, yellowish blotch spreading across the ceiling in the hallway. The old farmhouse smelled of dust and stale wood. It was clearly the kind of place that had history soaked into its bones. At first, I didn't think much of it. Houses settle, leaks happen. I had gotten this place at a steal. It was my second house, the first one since my divorce. The first one where I would be living solo. 2 floors, 1 basement, and a big L-shaped kitchen that I was dying to use. Of course, first, I had to get everything unpacked, put away, remember which drawer held the butter knives, and which one held all of the junk I didn't know what to do with. Basically, I should have been thinking about literally anything but the stain. Problem was, every time I walked into the room, my gaze was drawn up to that awful blotch. By the 3rd day, the stain had doubled in size. It wasn't just discoloration anymore. The edges darkened, turning the color of rotting fruit, and a faint, sour smell clung to the air beneath it. I ran my hand along the ceiling, feeling for moisture, but it was dry. I set a bucket underneath just in case. This figures. Okay, so time to start saving for repairs, I grumbled, unhappy with needing to do this so soon into my ownership of the place. Still, the spreading stain was quickly forgotten. The sound that woke me that night, not so easy to ignore or forget. A soft rhythmic tapping, like fingers drumming against wood. I held my breath, ears straining. Maybe it was a tree branch against the roof? No, the sound came from inside the ceiling. Slowly, I rose to my feet, drifting through the house. I flicked lights on as I went and soon found myself standing beneath the stain. What the? The sound was definitely coming from within the soured, putrid-looking mark. Once more, the step stool was collected, and I pressed my hand against it. The thumping audibly continued, but I couldn't feel anything. I rapped hard on the mark, hoping that whatever creature was on the other side would be scared off. It didn't work. The sound went on for hours, slow and deliberate. I barely slept. By morning, the bucket was no longer empty. A thick, dark substance had dripped down. Not water, something viscous, like oil or blood. It reeked of copper and rot. My stomach turned as I dumped it outside. The stain had spread again, creeping toward my bedroom. I called a contractor. He told me it was just an old house settling, probably some bad pipes. He'd come by next week. I didn't like the thought of waiting that long. But what was I going to do, right? It's not like I could fix it myself. The stain was too large to be contained just by a bucket. I bought a tarp for $5 and laid it down instead, hoping that it would help save the flooring. That night I woke to scratching, a slow, deliberate scrape, like nails dragging against wood. It came from above me. My stomach curdled at the sound, heart skipping a beat. I flicked on the bedside lamp. A new stain had appeared, right over my bed. I bolted upright, heart hammering. The tarp in the hallway was puddled with that black sludge. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. I'd call a plumber, a priest, the cops even. Someone had to come out. That was the end of it. I hadn't even unlocked my cell phone before muffled voices began hissing through the cracks in the ceiling. I couldn't make out the words, but they were there, urgent, angry. I backed out of the room, my left foot coming down on the tarp. The liquid splashed across the floor, thick and sticky, and something in the ceiling above me moved. I ran. It kept pace with me, scurrying through the ceiling above as I raced for the front door. As soon as I got outside, I ripped off my sock and threw it into the grass, desperate to get that foul sludge off of me. I slept in my truck. When dawn came, I forced myself to go back inside. The stain had spread down the walls now, tendrils of black snaking toward the floorboards. The ceiling above my bed had buckled inward, like something had been pressing against it from the other side. Whatever was pressing against the ceiling was still moving, a slow, deliberate swell of the bulging plaster. My breath hitched as a single wet crack splintered through the wood. Then another. Then the whole thing ruptured. A gaping blackened hole burst open, spewing a shower of rotted wood and that sickening putrid sludge. And something else, something pale, slick, and wrong tumbled free. Limbs too long, fingers too many, its head lolling like a broken marionette as it heaved itself upright. It turned toward me. I didn't wait to see its face. My legs finally caught up with my brain, and I bolted, slipping on the mess but catching myself just in time. The thing moved with me, its spindly limbs clawing against the floor, a wet, slapping sound accompanying every jerky movement. I reached the front door just as I heard it speak. Not words, just a sound. A rattling inhale, then a breathless, choked-out giggle. I slammed the door behind me and threw myself into the truck, fingers fumbling at the ignition. My hands were shaking so hard, I nearly dropped the keys. But then, blessedly, the engine roared to life. In the rearview mirror, I saw the farmhouse, the thing standing just inside the doorway. It didn't follow me outside. Didn't have a chance to, really, because as I floored it down the dirt road, kicking up gravel, I didn't stop driving until I reached a motel 2 towns over. I paid in cash. Right now, I've got every door locked. I've got all the lights on. I've checked too, just to make sure there aren't any stains in this room. I can't move again. Don't have the money for it. But I don't want to go back either. What if it's still waiting for me? I was drunk the first time I heard it. At least, that's what I told myself. It was just past midnight, and I was slouched on my couch, TV murmuring some late-night infomercial. Baxter, my golden retriever, lay curled up beside me, his tail thumping lazily against the cushions. "Good boy," I muttered, scratching behind his ears.
"Good boy,"
a voice whispered back. I sat up so fast my head spun. The house was quiet. The TV host droned on about non-stick pans. Baxter stretched, yawned, and settled back down. I stared at him. "Did you just..." My voice trailed off. He didn't react. I rubbed my face, let out a nervous laugh. Too much whiskey, too little sleep. That had to be it. But then it happened again, and again. At first it was simple, almost sweet. Good boy. Love you. Sleep tight. A whispery echo of things I'd said to him before, like a parrot. Then it got weird. I watch you sleep. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe I'd said that to him once as a joke, drunk or delirious. Maybe he was just repeating it back. Then one night, as I was locking up, he whispered,
"You should lock the door."
The hairs on my arms stood up. My hand froze over the deadbolt. The door was already locked. I turned to look at him. Baxter was lying by the stairs staring at me, mouth closed. But I swear I still heard it, faint as a breath against my ear.
"You should lock the door."
I didn't sleep that night. I started testing it. "Baxter, what's 2 plus 2? I asked one morning, voice light, joking. He just wagged his tail. I chuckled. "All right, buddy, say Baxter is the best dog." Nothing. Maybe I was losing it. That night as I lay in bed, I felt him jump up, circle once, then settle at my feet. His warm breath puffed against my toes. I was drifting off when the whisper came again.
"Don't turn around."
A cold rush of adrenaline flooded my veins. My body stiffened. He was at my feet. His mouth wasn't near my ear. I swallowed hard. "Why?" I whispered. Silence. Slowly I turned my head. Baxter was staring past me, eyes locked on something over my shoulder, unblinking. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The whisper came again, softer than ever, but clearer than before.
"Because it doesn't like to be seen."
I shot up, flicked on the bedside lamp, heart hammering. Nothing was there. Just my empty room, just my dog, staring. But this time, his tail wasn't wagging. I didn't sleep. I left the lamp on, the TV humming in the background, anything to keep the silence from creeping in. Baxter stayed at the foot of my bed, curled up but rigid, ears twitching at sounds I couldn't hear. I kept telling myself I was imagining things, that he wasn't really whispering, that none of this was real. But then, around 3 a.m., he growled. Not the playful, throaty grumble he made when I scratched his belly. This was low, deep, a sound that didn't belong in his throat, and he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the closet. A chill crawled up my spine. "Baxter," I whispered. "What is it?" His growl deepened, lips pulling back over his teeth. His body trembled, but he didn't move. The closet door was open. Just a crack. I was sure, so sure, that I had closed it. The whisper came again, but this time it wasn't soft. It was wet, sticking to the inside of my skull like breath against glass.
"It knows you're awake."
Something shifted behind the door. A rustle, the scrape of fabric against wood.
"You should have locked the door."
Baxter launched himself off the bed, snarling, charging the closet with more rage than I had ever seen in him. The door slammed open, and for one heart-stopping second, I saw. No, I felt it. A shape, a wrongness, something not meant to be seen. Baxter yelped, then whimpered, then went silent. The air in the room pressed against me, thick and heavy, a presence curling around my lungs. My legs wouldn't move, wouldn't run, wouldn't. The closet door creaked shut. Click, and just like that, it was over. Baxter lay motionless on the floor, his body limp, breath coming in shallow, rapid pants. I scrambled to him, hands shaking as I ran them over his fur. "Baxter, buddy, are you okay? What the hell was that?" He didn't look at me, didn't react, didn't whisper. He was fine, physically at least, and by the morning, he was up and moving again. It's been weeks since then. Baxter still eats, still wags his tail, still follows me from room to room, but he's not the same. He won't go near the closet, won't even look at it, and at night, when he curls up at my feet, I swear I can feel him trembling, like he's listening to something I can't hear. I don't know what was in my closet. I don't know how he started talking to me. But I know he was doing it to keep me safe. And I know that if something ever comes out of the closet again, I'll do what I can to protect him. I set up the trail cams after something got into my chicken coop. It wasn't a fox or a coyote. They leave messes, bloody ones. Let me tell you, I've cleaned up more than a few of those over the years. This one, it was precise. The wire was clipped, the latch was open, and 4 of my best layers were gone without a trace. I live out here alone, so I had no one to back me up when I told the story. But I know what I saw, or rather, what I didn't see. And I didn't see no damn coyote. "You sure about that?" Hayes asked, down at the general store. "I know what a mess they make. Someone stole them. Who's out here stealing your hens, Carrie?" "I don't know." I slapped my money down on the counter. "That's the point of the cameras. I'm going to see who took them." Hayes looked amused. "Hey, you think that chicken thieves are going to come back around a second time?" "Yes. And if they don't, just give me the damn cameras." And up they went. The first few nights, I caught the usual critters, raccoons scuttling through the underbrush, a few deer passing through, even a bobcat slinking along the tree line. But they didn't clip the wire and cleanly steal my hens, so I left them be. It was 5 nights before something else came onto the screen. At first, I thought it was a mountain lion. Big, sleek, moving low to the ground with purpose. It padded right through the frame of my western-facing cam at 2:47 a.m. But something about it was off. The legs were too long. The way the skin bunched around the joints looked unnatural, like it had extra folds it didn't know what to do with. And when it turned its head slightly, the eye was all wrong. Too round, too bright, like a human eye catching the light. I convinced myself I was seeing things. Low resolution, bad angle, maybe even a trick of the light. But I kept the cameras up. The next night it came back. This time I got a full body shot. The skin around its shoulders was peeling, like an old leather jacket stretched over something too big for it. I could see the wet sinew beneath, the way it glistened under the moon. The face was the worst part. It had the shape of a mountain lion, but the edges didn't sit right, as if it had been pulled too tight, and the mouth turned to the camera, and it smiled. Then it was gone, vanished into the darkness. I had no proof for it, but I knew in my heart whatever I'd just caught on film was the culprit. That creature, it was the one that took my hens. Just my luck that it wasn't the local kids bored and looking for something to do. Just my luck it had to be. Whatever that was. I didn't sleep that night. I kept the shotgun by my bed. Every light in the house on. My closest neighbor is 6 miles out, and I wasn't about to call the sheriff over a mountain lion with a weird face. But I didn't shut my eyes once. It was just the wrong feeling to do that. "You're letting it get to you, Carrie," I exhaled, acting just as bad as when you were drinking. Got yourself jumping at shadows. Nope. There was no chance I was tricking myself into relaxing. My eyes were still open when the dawn came. The night after that, the camera by my coop caught it standing on 2 legs. It was blurry, sure, but the shape was unmistakable. It had the hind legs of a big cat, but its torso was wrong. Too long, too thin. The skin had sloughed off in places, leaving exposed ribs and raw muscle. The face, it wasn't a cat's anymore. Does that make sense? It still had the skull of a cat, the ears, the fur, but the fur was sort of slipping back like a hood, and the muzzle had been twisted up somehow, or bent down, or just car hit broken in a way that let the smile get wider, the mouth gaping open in a way no animals should. And the eyes, no doubt about it, human. It looked at the camera again, and then I watched as it took its hands and snapped the chicken wire with its bare hands. I ran out at dawn, yanked down every camera, and dumped them in the shed. I figured if I ignored it, it would go away. Childish? Sure. But what else could I do? Go out there and face it? Just the thought had me shaking in my boots, so I told myself I was seeing things, that I had been awake too long, looking for something that wasn't there. This morning I found the last remaining trail cam sitting on my front porch. I know I didn't put it there. I hadn't even looked at the footage yet. My hands shook as I clicked through the files. The final image was taken at 3:12 a.m. The creature was no longer walking through the woods. It was standing right in front of the camera, too close, its torn skin hanging in strips. Its mouth was open wide, its lips peeled back, revealing rows of jagged, uneven teeth. And its eyes, they were staring right into the lens, into me. Then, in the last frame, it screamed. I don't remember throwing the camera. I don't remember running back inside. But I remember the sound. It wasn't caught on video, but I heard it. A high, keening wail, like metal tearing, like something forcing its way through flesh that was never meant to hold it. I haven't left the house since. I don't know what it wants, but I know one thing. It's watching me now. And hands that can snap wire can easily figure out how to open a flimsy wooden door. The ad was one of those weird last-minute Craigslist posts. Single dad needs babysitter for tonight. Well-behaved kid, $300 cash, 8 p.m. to midnight. Must like clowns. I'd just been ghosted by another client and was desperate to make rent. So, against every screaming instinct, I took the job. The house sat at the end of a lonely cul-de-sac, a grey 2-story with peeling paint and a faintly sagging porch. When I knocked, the door opened instantly, like someone had been waiting on the other side. A man stood there, mid-30s, wearing a wrinkled suit and a crooked tie. His eyes darted over my shoulder, scanning the empty street. "Come in," he said, barely glancing at me. The inside was cleaner than I expected, though the furniture looked like it had been bought second-hand from 5 different decades. He led me to the living room, where a boy of about 6 sat cross-legged on the floor, clutching a stuffed lion. His wide eyes flitted up to me, then back down. "This is Max," the man said. "He's shy, but he'll warm up." Max gave me the smallest of waves. "Everything okay?" I asked, noting the father's jittery demeanor. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, it's just, you know how kids are, overactive imaginations. He's been having nightmares, but he's fine. You're fine. Everything's fine." "Liar," my brain whispered, but I ignored it. Mostly because I needed the cash, but also because it plain wasn't my business. I was just here to tuck the kid into bed and make sure no one stole him in the night. Easy. After a rushed explanation about snacks, bedtime, and a promise to be back before midnight, he shoved a wad of 20s into my hand and practically bolted out the door. I watched through the window as his car sped off, leaving Max and me in uneasy silence. "What do you want to do, bud?" I asked, crouching to his level. "Best to make the kid feel a little more comfortable with me, right?" "Do you like clowns?" he whispered. He wasn't blinking. He had a chubby face and messy hair, but he also looked a bit squished and lopsided, like a clay figure someone had perfected, then dropped. The question hit me like a dart to the spine. It had been mentioned in the ad, but I still found it a bit unnerving. Sure. Why?" He pointed to a framed photo on the mantel. It was an old, faded picture of a man in full clown makeup. White face, red nose, frizzy orange wig. His painted smile was crooked, but his eyes were worse, small, dark, and narrowed. "That's Giggles," Max said solemnly. "He lives in the crawl space." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Daddy says not to talk about him," Max continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "But he comes out sometimes, at night." At least I knew what the dad had been talking about. Nightmares and a very overactive imagination. I plastered on a smile to hide the goosebumps crawling up my arms. "Well, Giggles must be a very nice clown if your dad lets him stay here, huh?" Max didn't answer. He just stared at the photo, his knuckles turning white around the stuffed lion. The kid was quiet. He didn't want to get up and play, didn't raise a fuss, ate his snack silently, and was asleep in his bed by 9, the stuffed lion tucked under his arm. I tiptoed out and settled on the couch, flipping through channels to distract myself. The picture of Giggles still loomed on the mantel, its crooked smile seeming to stretch wider in the flickering light. Would I get in trouble for turning it around? Probably. "It's a picture, Shelley. Stop getting yourself freaked out." At 10:12 p.m., a dull scraping sound, like something heavy being dragged across wood, cut through the otherwise uneventful night. I muted the TV and held my breath, listening. The sound came again, louder this time, echoing from somewhere below. The crawl space. I told myself it was the house settling, or maybe an animal, but my gut screamed otherwise. So did my stomach, which was suddenly twisted into tight, unrelenting knots. I grabbed my phone, its glow the only light as I crept toward the basement door. It was slightly ajar, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. Silence. I considered calling the dad, but what would I even say? "Hey, your imaginary clown might be real, and I think he's redecorating the crawl space." Against every shred of common sense, I went down. Morbid curiosity drove me. The basement was cold and smelled of mildew. Boxes lined the walls, and an old washer and dryer sat in the corner. But my eyes went straight to the small wooden door set into the far wall, its edges warped with age. The crawl space. The scraping sound came again, louder now. Directly behind the door, my heart hammered as I reached for the handle. It was ice cold. The door creaked open to reveal a low, narrow tunnel. Its walls lined with cobwebs. It didn't even come up to my knees. I crouched down and shone my phone's flashlight inside. That you in there? Giggles?" Something moved. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, but then it shifted again. A shape, hunched and unnatural, just at the edge of the beam. It had to be an animal. A raccoon, maybe, right? Panic gripped me. My jaws clenched painfully, but I couldn't release the tension. Is someone there? I whispered, my voice shaking. The shape jerked toward me, and for a split second, the flashlight caught its face. White makeup, red nose, black, empty eyes. I screamed and slammed the door, stumbling back up the stairs. My heart felt like it might burst as I grabbed Max from his bed and locked us both in the bathroom. He woke up crying, clutching his lion. What's happening? His pudgy cheeks were red from sobbing already. Nothing, I lied, my voice cracking. Just stay here, okay? My phone buzzed. A text from the dad. If you hear something downstairs, don't go in the crawl space. The blood drained from my face. It was too late on that one. My thumbs flew over the keyboard. What the hell is in there? No response. The sound of dragging came again. This time from directly outside the bathroom door. Max started sobbing, burying his face in my chest. I held him tight, my own tears streaming down my face as the doorknob began to rattle. Go away, I screamed, but the rattling only grew more frantic. And suddenly, it stopped. For a long moment, the only sound was Max's muffled cries. Then faintly, a voice drifted through the door, high-pitched and sing-song, like a nursery rhyme.
Hi, Maxie.
I clamped a hand over his mouth to keep him quiet. My other hand fumbled for anything I could use as a weapon, but the bathroom was bare. The voice came again, louder this time.
I'm lonely, Maxie. Won't you play?
The doorknob rattled once more, then went still. I didn't move, didn't breathe, until I was sure it was gone. I waited until almost midnight before daring to crack the door open. The hallway was empty, but a set of muddy footprints, huge and misshapen, led from the bathroom to the basement door. The dad came home minutes later, looking disheveled but unfazed. Did you go in the crawl space? He asked, his voice flat. What the hell is wrong with you? I snapped. Your kid's terrified. There's something down there. He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. Look, I'm sorry, but Max is fine. You're fine. It's just, Giggles doesn't like visitors. I quit on the spot and never looked back. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear a faint, high-pitched laugh echoing in my dreams, and I wonder if Giggles found a new crawl space. Hey everyone, I know I'm probably going to sound crazy posting this, but I don't know what else to do. I need to get this out before I lose my nerve. You see, I went camping in Pine Ridge National Park with 2 friends, Mark and Erin. It was supposed to be a fun weekend trip, just 3 friends getting away from everything for a couple of days. We made camp on a Friday evening, set up near a secluded hiking trail. The first day was perfect. We were laughing, roasting marshmallows, just relaxing. It was all easygoing and fun. By the time we crawled into our tents, we were already planning the next day's hike. Tomorrow we're finding that secret lake, Mark said, already with the map out. He always had this thing for tracking down hidden spots. He swore my dad had mentioned it once when we were younger. And yeah, I've known them for that long. Well, Mark at least. Erin was newer. Right, Erin said, pulling her hood over her head. And if we get lost, you're totally on your own. I'm not going to listen to your directions when we end up on some random cliff. We all laughed, and I felt that perfect sense of escape you get when you're surrounded by nothing but nature and good company. Pure, complete peace. The next morning, after a breakfast of instant oatmeal and coffee, we set off with high spirits. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and everything felt perfect. That was the only way to describe it. We were talking, joking, making fun of Mark's awful sense of direction. But as we ventured deeper into the woods, the trail became harder to follow. The map didn't match up with what we were seeing on the ground. Maybe we should head back, I suggested, the growing unease in my stomach making me second-guess everything. None of this looks familiar. Nah, we're close, Mark insisted. It's just up ahead. I've never seen this place before, Mark. You only think that because the memory is so old and foggy. Plus, it's got kid warp. Kid warp? You know, when you remember something completely different just because you were a kid when it happened. I was positive that's not what was going on, but we followed him anyway. And then we stumbled upon it. It happened around midday. We came across a clearing in the woods where the trees grew unnaturally far apart, like they'd been deliberately spaced. It was a perfect circle, almost too perfect. Does that make sense? The amount of work someone would have had to put into making them that evenly spaced would have been insane. Whoa. I was still looking at the trees. Whoa is right. Mark, however, was not. In the middle of the circle there was a black pit, maybe 4 or 5 feet wide. But the thing that got to me wasn't how big it was how wrong it looked. The earth around it was slick and damp. The pit itself oozed a thick black sludge. It looked like tar, but it carried with it an almost coppery smell. This sharp penny tang that made my mouth water unpleasantly. What the hell? Mark said, walking up to it without hesitation. That's freaky. I don't like this, I said, my voice shaking as I stared at it. The pit was a perfect circle too, just like the trees. Thick globules of black tar dripped molasses slow deeper into its cavernous maw. Small bubbles formed and burst at the edges. The grass directly around it was crisp, yellowed, dead. Come on, Chelsea, don't be such a buzzkill, Erin said, already pulling out her phone to take pictures. She crouched down, snapping shot after shot. This is amazing. It's like something out of a horror movie. Exactly. I threw my arm to the side. This is straight out of a horror movie, which is why we should go. Right now, we have that lake to look for anyway, right? Mark, aren't you dying to go find the lake? My voice took on a pleading tone near the end, but Mark, of course, didn't listen. I'll just take a look, he said, grinning like a kid who just found the best secret. It'll take 5 minutes tops. The place doesn't even look that deep. No, Mark, please, I started, but he was already climbing into the pit. Erin followed him, laughing. I'll be right behind you, she called out, her voice light. I stood at the edge, watching them disappear into the darkness of the pit. My heart was pounding, and my stomach twisted into a knot. I shouted at them to come back, but they didn't answer. Slowly, I stepped over to the pit, peeking inside, expecting to at least see them making their way down the tunnel. Nothing, just that viscous black dripping steadily into the shadows. A sense of unease settled over me. My body was screaming at me to run, to get the hell out of there, but I couldn't leave. Not yet. I told myself they were just having some fun. They'd come out any second, laughing about how stupid it was. The only reason I couldn't see them was because it was so dark. Minutes turned into hours. I sat down. I stared at the pit. I waited. The sun started to set. Mark? Erin? I called, my voice cracking. It was the first time I had spoken in hours. Nothing. The forest was quiet, too quiet. When was the last time I heard a bird? I couldn't remember. When I got up, my body protested, joints stiff from sitting so long. I walked closer to the pit, peering down into the darkness once again, trying to see any sign of them. But it was empty. There was no movement. I called out. No answer. It was going to be dark soon. Unease turned into panic, and I decided to call them and make them come back up. Don't ask me why I waited so long. I don't know. I just did. Maybe it was because I was afraid to admit they were gone. Maybe because I knew, deep in my heart, it wouldn't matter. Either way, I fumbled for my phone, but the signal was dead. The screen showed nothing. I tried again, tapping frantically, but there was nothing, not even a single bar. "Mark, Erin," I shouted, my voice growing hoarse. I waited a few more minutes, but nothing. No sound, no movement. I backed away slowly, my feet moving on their own, retreating from the pit. A chill crawled up my spine. It felt like the pit itself was watching me. The scent of copper became almost overwhelming. Several larger bubbles formed in a cluster and popped softly, letting out the unmistakable scent of bile. I couldn't stay there any longer. I turned and ran back to camp, hoping maybe they would show up there overnight. No, I wasn't hoping. I was praying that would happen. The camp was exactly how we'd left it. It was almost fully night now. I flung myself into the tent, then burrowed into my sleeping bag, pulling it tight around me. Sleep came surprisingly quickly, and in the morning, there was still no sign of them. I grabbed my backpack. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced myself to move. I needed help. I needed answers. I practically ran all the way back to the ranger station, my breath coming in sharp gasps. The ranger, Paul, was sitting behind the counter, flipping through some paperwork. His eyes flicked up when he saw me. "Something's happened," I gasped, nearly collapsing in front of him. "Mark and Erin, they're gone. They disappeared." I quickly told him about the pit, the terror returning just at the mention of it. "They must have fallen in and, I don't know, hurt themselves, gotten stuck. Something." Paul just stared at me for a long moment. He didn't seem surprised. He didn't look concerned. He looked sad, like he had seen this before. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll put in a call." He went to the phone, dialing something. "I'll send someone out to look, but you should know right now it won't do any good. They're gone." I didn't know what he meant, but his tone made it clear he wasn't just talking about my friends. It was like he already knew. He didn't need to search. He knew exactly what happened. Search and rescue came that afternoon. They looked for hours, combing the woods, scanning the area. They looked for the pit. They looked for my friends. They found nothing. No footprints, no signs of struggle, no trace of Mark or Erin. Nothing. After 2 days, it was announced that they were gone. That was it. There was no pit, no strange sludge. It was as if none of it had ever happened. The park closed the case, and the local authorities chalked it up to a missing persons report. Just another number in the hundreds of disappearances that happen in national parks every year. They called it a 411 case. That's it. I was the only one who wasn't content with that answer. I started looking and I found stories, the type people don't talk about, of hikers who just vanish in Pine Ridge, of places that don't exist, even though they're right in front of you. There are a lot of 411 cases in the world. There are a lot of them at Pine Ridge, but I know the truth. I know what I saw. I've been back to Pine Ridge a few times, looking for that pit. I don't even know why. I guess I keep hoping it'll be there. But it's gone. There's no sign of it. There's no sign of Mark or Erin either. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind picks up and I'm safe inside my tent, I swear I can hear their voices calling to me from the woods. It's like they're trying to tell me something, but the words always fade before I can make them out. And every time I think I've found that trail again, it slips away. I don't think anyone will ever find them. But as I'm typing this, safe in my tent, late at night, once more in Pine Ridge, all I can smell is that coppery tang. I might not find my friends, but tomorrow, I think I'll be able to find the pit. And I think I'm going to go in. My girlfriend and I are seasoned hikers. We've tackled everything from rugged mountain trails to swampy, mosquito-infested paths, and we've always made it out unscathed. But this time was different. This time, the trail almost didn't let us go. It started with a warning. I know, that sounds over the top, but it's true. The guy at the ranger station, a wiry, middle-aged man with a leathery face, looked up from his clipboard as we signed in. "You two sticking to the main trail?" He sounded like he must have smoked 4 packs a day for the last decade. "Planning on taking the loop trail up to the summit," I replied. "We've been looking into it for a while, and we think the weather's right for it this weekend. We've never been through Baroque Park before, but we've heard it's beautiful." My girlfriend curled her arm through mine and rested her cheek on my shoulder. "It's going to be great. I think he might have something special planned for us." I didn't. My smile turned nervous. The ranger hesitated, his pen hovering over the paper. Could he tell I didn't have a ring? Was he about to out me? No. He braced a hand on the counter and leaned forward, eyes serious beneath bushy eyebrows. "Stick to the marked paths, and if you hear anything strange, like a kid crying, you keep walking. Don't stop. Don't look. Just keep going." "What?" My girlfriend gave a nervous laugh. "Don't want you to get lost." The ranger's eyes didn't waver. "People go looking for what they shouldn't, and not all of them come back. We decided it was just some backwoods superstition to spook tourists. What else could it be? So after we brushed off the nerves, we shouldered our packs and started up the trail. The first few hours were uneventful, just the two of us surrounded by towering pines, the crunch of dirt and leaves underfoot, and the occasional bird call. If you've ever been on a hike before, well, there you go. Standard day. My girlfriend kept looking over at me, eyes gone to honey. I didn't know why she thought this was a special proposal trip. It wasn't until we parked that I even realized that's where her expectations were set. And my attention? Yeah, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do to cushion the blow when we hit the summit. Then we heard it. A child's voice crying. We stopped dead in our tracks. Amber froze, her eyes wide. "Do you hear that?" I nodded, my stomach twisting into knots. It sounded like a little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old.
Help me.
She was calling out, her voice breaking with sobs.
Please help me. Mommy, Daddy,
Her voice grew quiet with fear.
anyone?
"Hello? Are you okay?" I called, my voice bouncing off the trees. The crying stopped. For a moment, the forest was silent, too silent. No wind, no birds, nothing. Then the crying started again, louder this time, closer. "We need to check it out," Amber said, already stepping off the trail. She waved her arms to the side to keep her balance as she made her way down the incline. Every instinct I had screamed at me to stop her. "The ranger said—" "Screw what the ranger said," she snapped. "If it was your kid out there, wouldn't you want someone to help?" She had a point. Against my better judgment, I followed her down the incline and into the trees. The crying led us deeper into the woods.
Help me. Someone. Please.
She sounded frantic. But the further we went, the more I noticed something was off. The voice wasn't changing direction. Normally, if someone's lost, their voice shifts as they move or turn their head. But this sound, it was static, like it was coming from a fixed point. The ranger's warning came back to mind. My steps started to slow down. Amber, I think we should go back. Something's not right.
I can't find you, please. I'm scared.
The kid was sobbing now. Stop acting like a jerk, Amber snapped. She's got to be right ahead of us. Amber was right. 20 more feet and we saw her. She was sitting on a fallen log, her back to us, wearing a dirty pink jacket and clutching her knees to her chest. Hey, sweetie, Amber called gently, stepping closer. Are you lost? Where are your parents? The girl didn't answer. She just kept crying, her shoulders shaking with each sob.
Please help me.
Amber crouched down, reaching out to touch her shoulder. Wait, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Something about this felt wrong. Why was she just sitting there? When Amber had called for her, why hadn't she tried to find us? Amber, we should just go get the ranger. Come on. The girl's crying stopped. In one smooth, jerky motion, she turned to face us. Her eyes weren't right. They were too large, too dark, reflecting the light like an animal's.
You found me.
Her mouth stretched wide into a grin that split her face unnaturally, revealing rows of sharp, needle-like teeth.
I knew you would. I knew if I called for you, you would find me.
Then her skin, her entire skin, began to split down the middle like a zipper. I don't know what I was expecting to see underneath, but it wasn't this. It wasn't the sinewy, raw-looking creature that crawled out of its human shell, like a spider shedding its exoskeleton. Amber screamed, stumbling backward. I grabbed her arm, yanking her to her feet, shouting, "Run!" so loudly it made my throat sting. We bolted, crashing through the underbrush, branches whipping at our faces. Behind us, I heard the creature give a low, guttural growl, followed by the unmistakable sound of something running, fast. It was chasing us. We hit the incline, then the trail, and didn't stop running until we burst back into the ranger station, gasping for air. The ranger looked up from his desk, his face grim. You heard it, didn't you? We nodded, too shaken to speak. He sighed, getting up and locking the door. You're lucky you ran. Most people don't. We didn't ask what he meant. We didn't want to know. We've hiked dozens of trails since that day, but we've never gone back to that forest. And if we ever hear crying in the woods again, we'll keep walking. I hope you enjoyed tonight's stories. I had a great time with them. Huge thanks to the author. They really have some great stories on their profile. I'm definitely going to have a read myself and hope they'll let me narrate more in the future. Quick question. These videos take a bit of time to make, so I was thinking, what if I did these videos with visuals once a week, and on the other days, I brought you stories with visuals like rain or campfires? Or would you prefer I keep doing these longer videos every time? Let me know in the comments. If you liked tonight's stories, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. This is Mr. Hauntingly Yours, signing off for the night. I'll see you in the next one. And remember, don't listen too closely in the night. Some whispers are better left unheard.